Hello, friends, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge. In the first story, we'll tell you how the team in the company pissed off their boss. You'll love it. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Be nice to your IT people. Don't flaunt your income in others' faces. A few decades ago, I worked IT for an up-and-coming tech firm. It was a good place, and I enjoyed working there. However, the company finances were chronically lean, which occasionally resulted in some cutbacks. As a result, I wasn't surprised when an announcement was made that there would be a wage freeze, and that all department budgets were being cut. What made this financial episode memorable was how a senior VP dealt with it. It happened that the VPs and CEO had been deferring taking some bonuses contractually due them. I'm not sure of the specifics, but apparently the deferrals had gone on too long, and the company finally had to pay them out. To forestall unrest among the rank and file, the VPs were told in no uncertain terms that they were to keep the news of the payments quiet. One VP, however, went out and bought an expensive, high-end European sports car and started driving it to work. This, in turn, raised some eyebrows among those whose previously okayed pay increases had been put on hold and whose department budgets had been slashed. This VP was also more trouble for the IT department than the rest of the company put together. About this time, there was one particularly unpleasant interaction where he'd gone off on us due to a problem he'd been experiencing for a few weeks due to his own ineptitude and unwillingness to cooperate with us to try and fix it. This last episode was one which justified payback. Our parts cabinet soon contained a 10-milliliter syringe and a bottle of castor oil. About once or twice a week, one of us would happen to squirt a syringe full of castor oil up the tailpipe of his new car. The result was that when the exhaust pipe of the car heated up enough to burn off the castor oil, the car would emit a massive plume of opaque smoke. Since he lived close to work, the pipe wouldn't heat up enough to start smoking during his commute, making it seem to happen randomly. Needless to say, this took the enjoyment out of the pricey new toy he was showing off. Given his personality, it was a given that he'd go back to the dealer and read them the riot act when they couldn't find anything wrong with the car. Eventually, they did find something to fix, which wasn't covered by warranty, and apparently cost him a sizable chunk of change. The injections then ceased for a few weeks, only to start up again. By this time, he was disgusted enough with the car that he sold it at a bargain price, just to be rid of it. The new owner got a great deal. The castor oil didn't damage the car at all, since it was at the end of the exhaust pipe and downstream of all sensors, etc. And our second story. You would like me to adhere to the contract? In that case, I require a hotel until you resolve all these issues. A few years ago, I moved back to the city in which I was a university student. As I was now a young professional and had experienced significant issues with housemates in the past, non-payment of bills, having to do all the cleaning, I decided that I would rent a small flat from a reputable agency which specifically catered for young professionals such as myself. I went and viewed the property, which was quite messy and needed to have a few things addressed, i.e. the vinyl flooring in the kitchen was ripped, one of the drawers in the freezer was broken. But seeing as tenants were still living in the property and the agency assured me that between tenants the landlord would clean the property, and resolve any small issues prior to moving in, I happily signed a contract and wrote a check for the deposit and first month of rent. 2 months later, I moved into the property and was welcomed with the following issues. Note: I just happened to stumble upon the list I made at the time when cleaning out an old hard drive a few days ago. General: the entire property had not been cleaned. Fire door wouldn't close, breach of fire regulations. The previous tenants had left much of their belongings behind, namely clothes and bedding. General waste was present in all rooms, bins had not been emptied. Batteries had been removed from all fire/smoke alarms. By law, they were meant to be hardwired in rented property. Half of the light bulbs have been removed from the property. Hallway: main supply and circuit breaker ripped from wall, incredibly dangerous. Carpet soiled. Bedroom: slats on bed broken, so would not have been able to sleep on it. Mattress torn and ripped. Vinyl floor ripped up. Window jammed closed. Bathroom. Mirror broken. Shower door broken off hinges. Vinyl floor torn up. Kitchen/living room. Washing machine broken. All drawers in fridge, freezer absent or broken beyond repair. Gas cooker. Missing burner caps and pan rail, therefore unusable. 2 cupboard doors hanging off. Vinyl floor ripped up. Curtain pole ripped down. It was very clear that 2 things had occurred here. The first being that the previous tenants had done a bit of a number on the property, that they had not respected the property and had left quite a lot of damage in their wake. They didn't even have the decency to empty the place of their contents and at bare minimum take the rubbish out before leaving. The second issue, however, is that the landlord had evidently not made any significant attempt to bring the property back into a habitable state prior to me moving in. Being the reasonable guy that I was, I called the landlord and asked if he could resolve these issues immediately, primarily as the property was genuinely in a dangerous and non-inhabitable state. I didn't want to be a jerk about it, however, at the bare minimum, the flat should be safe to inhabit. The landlord dismissed all my complaints and stated that his wife, he was on a business trip to Dubai, had inspected and cleaned the property a few days before, and all was fine. A blatant lie. I told him that I was extremely unhappy with the situation, and he told me to adhere to the contract which I had signed. He subsequently put the phone down. Any sympathy I had for the landlord evaporated at this moment. He was happy for me to live in a dangerous property. So I went through my contract line by line and found 2 key pieces of information. If a property is deemed to be in breach of fire regulations and/or is deemed uninhabitable by a suitable representative, it's the responsibility of the landlord to resolve such issues immediately. If the landlord cannot resolve such issues immediately, it is the responsibility of the landlord to provide alternative accommodation to the tenant until the property is returned to habitable state. Fortunately, a close member of my family at the time was a fellow of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. Within the hour, I had a formal letter stating that the property was uninhabitable and dangerous. I had this email to the landlord, address helpfully listed on the contract. Within 10 minutes, I had a call from him arranging emergency accommodation at a local hotel until he returned from his business trip 3 days later. On his return, he drove directly to the property from the airport and returned the checks for my deposit and first month's rent to me, and asked me to move out, which I gladly did. Unbeknownst to him, a copy of the letter had been sent by my family member to the housing ombudsman and the local authority. The last thing I heard is that this bloke ended up being investigated, heavily fined, and had to sell the house. And our last story. Trying to get me fired? Well, it certainly backfired. So a backstory. I used to work at McDonald's. All my coworkers were pretty nice and all, so there wasn't an issue. Well, there was one issue. We'll call her Karen. Karen was not liked by a single person in the store. She knew the manager from family, which is probably why she worked there. We were also the same age, but I was probably almost a foot taller. This story was about a few months ago. At first it was small. She'd bump past me, make a mess, not clean up, leave everything in a silly state, etc. Of course I was PO'd. I complained to the manager once and she said not to worry. Karen comes in the next day, PO'd at me. She starts purposely messing up my orders. This is when those silly screens came in, by reading everything wrong, like she'd say 102 for 101's order and getting me in trouble. The stupid manager, Mark, told me off since Karen was such an angel and wouldn't do such a thing. She looked innocent and nobody would suspect anything from such an angel, while I was some giant that didn't look as cute nor worthy of being believed compared to Karen. One of my coworkers was actually a good friend of mine. He also hated Karen. Obviously, Mark wouldn't care, so we needed to find some sort of plan. Friend comes into work. During a quick break, he tells me he has a plan. Firstly, we should go complain to the manager. She'd obviously deny all the claims despite it being the 5th time someone had complained in the span of 3 weeks. Me and F would secretly record the conversation, she told us, for evidence before she would fire Karen. We then got all our coworkers to record, voice or video, Karen's bitchy behavior. Outside, during work, some people actually got audio clips somehow. Me and F got recordings of the trash she did in the break room. One time she lost her drink and literally had a breakdown and started attacking F and accusing him of theft. I recorded the whole thing. She moved on to me and I had to stop recording. After 2 weeks, we had enough evidence. So we went to the manager with all our little bits of info. We also told her that we would bring up the situation to someone like a higher rank since she was doing the wrong thing. She promised to fire Karen if we got evidence. I don't know if it was blackmail, we were just doing what we thought we should have done. We had the audio clip of her snapping to me and F. She started stuttering but caved in. She said she might fire Karen or have a conversation with her. Or at least that's what we thought. The next time I had a shift, Karen was there. I was pissed. Mark, like I said, was friends with Karen's family and reported us to her parents. Karen immediately started being horrible to everyone and everything. She did the old messed up on orders, made messes in general everywhere, like purposely overflowing some ice cream, leaking it onto the floor, and stealing drinks and stuff that were for customers. She also shouted at everyone in the break room. A few customers complained to Mark, who said she wasn't going to do anything. F then exposed Mark in front of everyone, showing the clips to her. The McDonald's had like 5 customers in a line and another 4 waiting for food when F confronted Mark. Ultimately, Karen was fired from complaints from literally everyone in the existence of Earth, and F was also fired for misconduct or something. Mark probably was pissed at what he did. Nobody knows what happened to Karen. Our manager was also fired, according to one of the workers who was involved, but I left to focus on finishing the school year and getting into college a few days after Karen and F being fired. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.